Good afternoon, welcome back to Cruising Off Duty. I am Craig. Well, we're going to continue our series talking about how you can live off the grid longer, more enjoyably, and probably more economically in this episode. We're going to be talking today about the AllPowers 400-watt folding solar panel. That's right, 400 watts in one panel. This is the biggest one I've ever reviewed. If you watched the last episode, I reviewed the Bluetti 350-watt solar panel. And I'm a boater, I'm a sailor, and I was already saying, I don't know if I can fit this on my boat unless the sun happens to be coming from the starboard or port side of my boat. It's just so big and so long that I can only really run it down one side of my boat or another. This is even larger. You're going to see video in a second showing me comparing this 400-watt panel to this 350-watt folding panel to 400 watts of glass panels to see which one does better. But keep in mind, the one selling feature of the AllPowers brand is it's less expensive than two 200-watt glass panels, which is what I'm comparing it to, and, believe it or not, cheaper than a 350-watt folding solar panel. So if you don't get all the way to the end of the pros and cons, and you just want to know what are one of the pros of having the AllPowers versus the Bluetti, it's price. This is right now on sale for $639 US for 400 watts. This 350 watt panel is $799. So you're paying more for less watts. But there's more. There's more to that story. You are paying less, but there are some features and some technology that are in the Bluetti that maybe aren't quite as good with the AllPowers. So, as you know, if you watch my channel, I always give you the pros and cons. I'm not paid by any of these products. They do sometimes send me products to review, but they don't tell me what to say. I never accept payment for doing a review. And I always want to show you that I'm true to you, and then true to the premise of doing these reviews is that I want to show you an unbiased pros and cons. I talked about the cons in this, and some of these features actually got rid of those cons. So they're pros for this, but there's some things on the Bluetti that are definitely better than what's in the AllPowers. So you have to decide, do you want to spend less and miss some of the stuff you get with the Bluetti, but gain some things as well? Or do you want to pay a little bit more to get the Bluetti? So at the end of this video, you'll be able to decide. I'm going to do comparisons in how each one does in what today was actually a perfectly blue sunny sky. So let's talk about some of the things right off the bat. All your specs are written right on the outside of this zippered bag. Now this is a zippered bag, you'll see in a second, is where all the wires are. But I just want to show you, if you're ever not sure, the one number you almost always want to know is what's your open circuit voltage. That's right here. It happens to be 45.3 volts. The reason you need to know that is sometimes if you're plugging this into a solar generator like this AllPowers S2000 or any other brand that accepts a solar panel with an MC4 connector, it might say this solar generator handles up to 400 watts. And you're like, ooh, up to 400 watts. Okay, this should work. But you always have to read the fine print. What is the open circuit voltage that it will accept? In this case, this one's giving out 45.3 volts. What happens if your solar generator says we'll accept 400 watts to a maximum of 42 volts? Well, then this is too big. Your solar generator probably won't accept this. Maybe you have to drop down to a 350 watt. That's why I always put that caveat in there. Don't just look at the watts, look at the open circuit voltage. So anyways, all the stats you'd want to know are written right here on it. But let's go through the features. You can follow along on the website. It's pretty much going to be broken down exactly like it shows on there. It is a 400 watt folding solar panel, and I should unzip this just to show you. It is a massive bag, isn't it? I can barely fit. Inside this is the MC4 connectors. Love that. I do not like solar panels where it comes with a barrel port, a regular DC out, whether it's 5mm, 8mm, or whatever. And that's actually going to be mentioned here in their pros of this sort of technology. An MC4 connector is not only kind of the universal standard for solar panels, but it also allows 25 amps of juice going through it, as opposed to a normal DC barrel plug is usually rated for 10 amps. So you want your solar panel to be MC4 connectors. So you can plug this into any solar generator that already comes with a cord that has an MC4 connector on one side, and then whatever input is on the other side. In this case with the AllPowers S2000, it's an XT60 On the Bluetti that I actually did my testing on, that's my main solar generator I use, it is an XT90, but almost all of them come with MC4 connectors on one side and then whatever input they use on this side. Also inside this, you get two different bags. Again, you're getting the normal MC4 connector to XT60. That's the standard for their own in-house AllPowers solar generator. And then there's also, which I was surprised and glad to see, they do have an MC4 to various barrel plugs. They've got a 5mm, and it looks like a converter that goes from 5mm to 8mm, because some solar generators, like one I did a review for, the Bluetti actually, EB3A, comes with a barrel port in. So yes, so some solar generators come with a barrel port in. It's not really my favored way. I like the XT60 or the XT90. And if you do have a cord that's an XT60, and let's say you're trying to plug this into a Bluetti, you can just buy on Amazon. I got a 4-pack of these. It's an XT60 to XT90 converter. So you just plug this on the end of the cord, and now you've got an XT90 coming out instead of an XT60. So again, if you buy this AllPowers, does not mean you need to plug it into an AllPowers solar generator. It can go into a Bluetti, it can go into an EcoFlow. You just need to make sure you have the right attachment on one side of this cord to go into whichever solar generator you have. Anyways, I just thought I'd let you know those come thrown in. I will do my pros and cons at the end, but one thing I do want to mention right off the bat while I'm showing you this, look how short this cable is though. And I've mentioned this when I did the AllPowers 200-watt solar panel review. Some reason AllPowers decides they only need to give you a cord that's like 2.5 feet long. And I'm counting it from where it goes into the solar panel, not where it comes out of the bag. If it comes out of the bag, it's literally a foot long. So AllPowers, again, a little bit extra money, be like the Bluetti and give like a 10-foot long cord that comes out of this, so that if you are an RV or a camper and you have your solar generator near somewhere where it's protected from the sun, you have enough cord to get there. Otherwise, you have to have your solar generator right beside your solar panel, which may not be optimal because you're putting your solar panel in direct sunlight, and you may not want to put your solar generator also in direct sunlight. Now this thing is a beast. It's huge when you unfold it. It's 5 panels, as you'll see in the video in a second. So there is a fair bit of shade if you've got the legs out underneath it, and it is fairly tall, so you probably can stick your solar generator underneath your solar panels to get out of the sun. So there's that. So as their features on their website, it says 400-watt huge solar panel, and there's a diagram of it. It is 5 panels wide, which is big, which is long, right? It's tall and long, but 5 panels is a lot to unfold. So the trick is to put one panel, lay out, pull out the leg, flip the next one, pull out the leg, flip the next one, pull out the leg, and just keep doing that till they're all out. Don't unfold it all and then run around trying to get all the legs out. Yeah, that's not the efficient way to do it. You kind of learn that probably the hard way by doing it the wrong way first. The next slide is really just showing you the specs, but one important spec that I hadn't mentioned is the efficiency of 22%. That is considered efficient by today's standard because a lot of solar panels, especially folding solar panels, especially ones that are polycrystalline, not monocrystalline, they often are 19% efficient. So 22 is on the high end of what a polycrystalline panel can do, but keep in mind 22 does not match the monocrystalline of the Bluetti. That's 23.4%. And when you see my comparisons in the sunlight, you can kind of tell that the Bluetti is a little bit more efficient. Again, you're paying more money for that efficiency. And there's just the size. Unfolded size is 105 by 266 by 0.5 centimeters. Oh, and the weight is 18.5 kilograms, which for Americans, that's like, anyways, it's like 40 pounds. It's pretty heavy. Just off the top of my head, where would you use this? Clearly not a sailor like me, because you just don't have deck space to unwrap this 5-panel solar array. It's just not a useful thing. This is meant for a camper. They're showing it in beside a garden, RV, camping. And when they say garden, I think what they really mean is power outages at your home. And this is one reason that even though this probably won't work for me on my boat, it's always nice to have this as backup solar to supplement my 400 watts of glass panels I just always have in my backyard. If we had a power outage, 400 watts of solar isn't going to do it for me. If I started running my furnace, my fridge, my freezer, my this, my that off my solar generator, I'm going to have to bring in a lot more than 400 watts. I have multiple ways to plug into not only my Bluetti, but I also have other solar generators. So having multiple panels in my backyard to capture the sun, whether it's summer, winter, or whatnot, That'll be great. If we ever get hard to say that. If we ever get an elongated power outage, and we have had that here in Canada. We had a tornado go through here and tear down the power lines, and people were out of power for well over a week. We've had a ice storm where the ice was so thick on the power lines it actually brought power lines down, bent them, and contorted those metal power lines like you wouldn't believe. The power was out for some people for weeks. So having solar generators in your house, having solar panels in your house, it's a godsend in those times, because you're going to love it, because gas generators don't last that long. I have a little 2,000 watt gas generator, and it runs for maybe 3 hours before it runs out of gas. So you can't just leave it on, go to bed, and everything's still running the next day. Sure, if you've got a huge gas generator, it'd probably be fine, but there's the smell, the noise, and all that. Your neighbors don't love you if you're running a gas generator all night while they're trying to sleep. Solar is the way to go. Solar generators is the future. This diagram is just showing you what I already said. MC4 connectors, IP67 water resistance. That's pretty good. So it says splash and rain resistant and submerged for short periods of time, which means I guess if you dropped this in a puddle and went oops and picked it up and took it out, it should be fine. IP67 is a pretty high water rating. It shows you the cables you get. Again, you can see from this visual that the cable that comes with it is pretty short, should be at least 10 feet in my opinion. And then this diagram on the bottom right is going to be one of my negatives you're going to see later. This guy is showing pulling out the legs, and that is exactly as far out as you can pull those legs. I mean, you can really torque on them if you want, try and get them a little further. But the problem with that, if you have legs that don't go out far enough, is you can't lean the solar panel back far enough if the sun is pretty high in the sky, like it was today at 2:20 in the afternoon. I even waited a little while to try and let the sun get a little lower in the sky, but it just wasn't working for me. I was going to be waiting all day for the sun to be low enough in the sky that it hits this at the right angle. And the reason I say that is I live in Canada. Sure, it kind of gives it away. In May, June, it says in summer, the optimal angle for your solar panel, which means they assume you're never going to move your solar panel, so what angle should you just sit it there and leave it, is 18.7 degrees, which is pretty flat, 18 degrees. 45, 18. And the problem with this is the legs just don't go out far enough for it to lean back far enough, if you know what I mean. The legs go out to a certain point and stop, and now you've got solar panels that are like a 45-degree angle, but the sun is almost, relatively directly above you. So, jumping ahead a bit, but that is going to be one of my gripes, is that why couldn't you make the legs with a strap that goes even longer so you could lean the legs out even further, similar to the Bluetti. The Bluetti has my favorite technology in legs. It's got a spring-loaded strap. So you can pull it out really far and lean it really far back, and then when you want to put it away, it's not this strap that's just loose and flopping around. As you bring it back in, it actually is spring-loaded somehow inside, and it sucks in the strap, which is primo. I love that. Unfortunately, again, you're not paying nearly as much money. The AllPowers just comes with a strap on the leg, and the leg goes to only a certain length and then stops, because that's as far as the strap will allow it to go. And this diagram here is kind of showing you this as well. It's just showing you the legs go out to a certain point. It says it is adjustable, but what they mean is once the leg gets out to the maximum it can get out, it can't go any further. So you can't lean it back any further. But if you needed it further up, like even more upright, you could bring the legs in, of course. You just can't bring the legs out. So there's a limit to how far back you can lean it. Every diagram they show you of these solar panels, here's the one beside the camper van. Look at how tall it is. That's real world. That's about as far back as you can lean it. Now, could you just build a wooden structure and you just fold the legs in and lean it against some structure? Yes, but the structure has to be pretty long, because when you unfold this, it's pretty long. So you can't just put a chair out there and lean it against it, because then all the sides would flop over, right? If you get my drift, it wouldn't be pretty, it wouldn't be efficient. You want all the panels to be at the same angle. So if you were an RVer or a camper where this is something you put out regularly and it's summertime and you know it's going to be around, in my case, around 18.7 degrees, you would just build a little wooden structure that you always lay your solar panels on. And then if it's going to be blustery and stormy and rainy for a bunch of days, you can just fold this up and take it inside so it doesn't get abused by the sun and the rain for no reason, and then bring it back out, and your little wooden structure or whatever you built is already there. You just unfold it onto your structure. That would be what I would do if I was a camper or RVer and plan to use it on an ongoing basis. I would probably just build myself a little structure because clearly the legs don't go back far enough. So that is pretty much it for features. Oh, there is another feature I wanted to mention. If you watched my video about the Bluetti, the complaint I had is why aren't there any grommets or loops or something on the corners, thinking as a boater, because if you put this out on the deck of your boat, or even like I said, if you're an RVer, you don't know when a windstorm's going to blow through. And these things are big, but not super heavy when you think about how much windage they have. And they will get blown over. I thought if that one had loops on the corners, you could bungee it to things. You could get tent pegs and peg it into the ground and run a little bungee so that it doesn't flop forward onto its face. Because as I said in that video, even if you're an RVer and not a boater and worried about it falling over the side into Lake Ontario, even if you're an RVer, you don't want it to flop on its face while you think you're getting solar all day while you're out shopping and you come home and find out it blew over onto its face and has been facing face down and getting zero solar for you all day. That's disappointing in its own right. Plus, if you flop it forward onto something like gravel, there's a chance you're going to scratch the surface. So this one comes with little loops. I don't know if you can really see that. Little loops on every corner, which is primo. That's what I wanted to see on the Bluetti. So AllPowers could learn from Bluetti by having better legs. Bluetti could learn from AllPowers by having little loops on its corners. So again, they both have their pros and their cons. And the last thing I haven't mentioned yet is there is an ETFE coating on it. When I was outside recording it, I said I don't remember what the coating is because I couldn't remember. They don't look the same. When you look at the Bluetti, it's black with like a pebbled, shiny surface. And when you see this, it's more silver or gray. It didn't look like the same type of coating, but when I actually looked at the specs here, it is ETFE coated, so it's the same coating. And what ETFE coating really does, it just stops the plastic coating that protects the cells from fading or fogging, and it helps it to be scratch resistant. So if it does flop over on its face and there is one or two little rocks there, hopefully you don't scratch the glass. If you do, I've got my Bluetti has actually got a scratch in it. I think it came like that when they sent it to me, but I don't want to blame them. Maybe it happened with me, but I didn't see it ever fall over and it's got a scratch. So long and short, the ETFE is supposed to stop or minimize scratches. And more importantly, you don't want it to fog over. If you ever look at those outdoor lights, those little garden lights you can buy where it's got a little tiny solar panel on top, inevitably they're cheap. And whatever coating is on those solar panels starts to fog with age. And before you know it, you can't even see through the fogginess at the little cells inside. Starts out being black, and within one summer you look down and it's foggy gray. So how much sun is really getting through that fogginess to the cell underneath? Probably not a lot. So ETFE is a good selling feature. So that's pretty much it. Let's roll the video of me showing you comparing the glass panel to the Bluetti to this. And at the end, I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, as you can see, this is the perfect day for testing solar panels. I've got my tried and true 400 watts of Renogy panels. And if you've seen my previous videos, you can see I've got it much more flat now. It's, what is it today? May 22nd, 2:20 in the afternoon. And the sun is pretty much pretty high in the sky. And I'm going to be comparing it to the Bluetti 350 watt and the AllPowers 400 watt. Unfortunately, with the table set up, I can just make these as flat as I want. With these, they have legs. Now, as you can see, the Bluetti can go much more flat. Those legs can go out. That's the max they can go out. So it gets you a pretty flat profile up towards the sky. The AllPowers, they just have a set leg length, and that's as far out as you can get them. So as you can see, kind of too steep for the present sun conditions, which are pretty high up in the sky. So what I may have to do is I'll test the glass panels first because I can make them match the angle of the sun. And then after the sun sets a little bit more, then I'll go on to the Bluetti, which is the next least steep. And then finally the AllPowers. So let's see how it goes. So you may have to take my word for it, but I've done the soup can test to show that this is pretty close to the best angle you're going to get. As you can see, the exact same time on the Bluetti, there's a bit of a shadow underneath the can, so it needs to be leaned back a bit more. Unfortunately, it can't. And as you can see from the AllPowers, it's a significant shadow. So again, too steep to be perfectly angled for this sun condition. So since my 400 watts of energy glass panels are always out in my backyard and they're always charging this Bluetti AC200Max, I'm going to use this solar generator to compare all three so that I am comparing apples to apples. So this is the result of the glass panels, 400 watts rated, presently bringing in 343 watts. So pretty decent, pretty decent. Not as much as it's rated for, but I'm getting used to that with the glass panels. Very rarely do I see anything, you know, bordering on the full 400 watts. You know what, I've decided, even though it's not perfect, it's close enough. You know, you're never gonna have, with something that's got legs like this, you're never gonna have the absolute perfect angle. As long as you're getting pretty close to the perfect can test, it's not far off. So let's go see what the Bluetti gets. Now remember, this is only a 350 watt panel, and we were comparing it to the glass panel that's 400. Okay, 320 is the highest I've seen, going anywhere between 315, 320. Out of 350, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Like you say, could you get the perfect angle? Sure, if I wait longer and let the sun go lower in the sky, I could, but that's not realistic. You're gonna leave it out there all day. So this is what you're gonna get in fairly optimal conditions with just slightly the wrong angle to the sun because of the legs not going any lower. Just so you know, I'm using the same wiring that I use. You can see the wiring going across the grass that I use for my glass panels, just so it's the same length of wire going from the glass panels to the Bluetti you just saw. And now I'm going to do the AllPowers. So I'm going to move the Bluetti out of the way. I'm going to do two tests. I'm going to do the AllPowers with the legs extended as far as you can, which is pretty much the way it is now, but I'm going to turn it a bit so it's a little bit angled more towards the sun. And then I'm going to lay it flat on the grass and just see. Those are your two options. Just see if one's better than another. Now the downside to leaving it flat on the grass is solar panels don't like getting too hot. They start to lose efficiency. So if you're flat on the grass, there's no airflow behind the panel. So that's possibly a negative. Okay, so as you can see, I've connected them. Unfortunately, that's as far back as they can lean. And of course, like I expected, we're not really getting anywhere close to the 400 watts it's rated for. I know that's because the angle isn't perfect. But like I said, you don't have much choice. That's as far back as you can lean it without actually just laying it flat on the grass. So let's get to laying it flat on the grass and see if that's much better. Okay, here it is laying flat on the grass. I actually threw a little board underneath it, just give it a little airflow. Not that it'll make a big difference. But again, that's on AllPowers. You got to make a leg that extends out further. So it's either the last setting or lay it flat. And of course, as expected, you're not even doing as well now. 272 is what I saw. So, yeah. Worse laying flat on the grass than with the legs out, even though the legs out are too straight up and down. Okay, as you can see, the glass panels did, okay, let's say they're the standard. You know, I think they were getting like 330 or something like that watts out of 400. This was getting 300 out of it, so less than the glass. And the Bluetti actually did the best. Again, I shouldn't be surprised. Hopefully you're not surprised. It is 23.4% efficient versus 22% efficient. So it did better. It also had that leg system that went out further, so it was leaned back. That was the main reason, I think. I think if I had built a structure for this to be exactly at 18.7 degrees and I had it perfectly pointed at the sun, I could have gotten this to be as good as the glass panels. So I think this is perfectly fine quality. It feels like quality in its ratings. The only reason the rating of how many watts it got wasn't as high was because it wasn't efficiently situated. It was either standing on his legs and it was too up and down for the sun that was more directly above it, or it was flat on the grass where it was too flat and the sun was a little bit out of an angle. So it was never at that perfect angle. Therefore, I'm willing to cut it a break. But I think that's on AllPowers to correct. You need to come up with more positions for those legs. I mean, I've seen ones where they don't have the lovely spring-loaded ones. I think the Bluetti 200 watt, which is down here, it doesn't have spring-loaded legs, but what it has is snaps at various angles. It'll be like, here's 15%, here's 30%, here's 45%, and you just put the snaps at where you think you need them. So obviously in the summer, if I had a 15% snap, I would snap it there, and it would bring the solar panel down to 15%, which is about where I need it to be. And if I want 30, great. If I want it 45, great. But you pick ahead of time, probably, you pick the snaps on all the legs, and then when you unfold them, they're stopping at the right angle. So AllPowers' quality of their panels seem perfectly fine. The price can't be beat. It's far, far cheaper for 400 watts than the Bluetti. It is foldable, which if you don't want to buy glass panels, because let's face it, lugging around glass panels to go camping, it just doesn't make any sense. You could pack this in your van or RV and go camping quite easily. Use it when you need it, take it in out of the elements when you don't. Glass panels are just going to be like a set it and forget it, leave it beside your RV or mount it to the roof of your RV, and they're going to be out there all the time, which has its pros because you don't have to think about it. They're just always out there and they can take rain, sun, wind, whatever. But if you want additional solar, this is probably the technology you want because you can bring it out when you need it and add it to maybe your already existing glass panels that you have, maybe on the roof of your RV. With an RV, there's usually limited floor space for solar panels, so maybe you put out 2 or 3 panels and that's okay amount of solar panels, but you would like more. And that's where something like this would come in handy because you could just unfold this beside your RV and get that additional solar that you probably really, really need when you're using a lot of power-hungry appliances. So before I close this off, let's just talk one more time about the pros. Pros, quality seems great. ETFE coated, 22% efficient, IP67 rated. Yeah, there's really nothing to complain about. Like, another pro again is the price is the lowest I've seen for a folding 400 watt solar panel. So that is definitely a plus. Cons, kind of some little nitpicky thing. Come on, give us a wire that's not 2 feet long. What else? Oh yeah, the legs. The number one thing is the legs. And that's it. Those are the only 2 things I can think of. Price is right, quality's right. Legs could use a little engineering. So that's it. Hopefully you found this entertaining or informative, more likely informative in this case. If so, show the channel some love by giving it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to do more of the live off the grid longer episodes while my boat is getting its transmission fixed. After that, maybe I'll get back to some sailing episodes. My next episode is going to be actually 2 of these. These are something I've just got sent to me. 2 100 amp hour batteries that are so small. And just a foreshadow, I just tested them and they both beat the 100 amp hour rating. So I'm going to do a review on these next. And the reason I got 2 identical ones is I told them I want to be able to put these in parallel to make a 200 amp hour house bank battery, because let's face it, if you're an RV or sailor, boat or whatever, a house bank is never going to be one 100 amp hour battery. That's just not big enough. 200 amp hour battery? Yeah, a lot of times that's what you'd use. On my boat last year, I had one 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery, which is what these are. This would have been sufficient for what I used last year, but then I got all these batteries sent to me to review and I decided, why not put in twice as many? So now I have 2 200 amp hour batteries in my boat in parallel. So I have 400 amp hours of house bank battery plus my start battery. If I wanted to, not that I need to, but if I wanted to, I could put this in parallel to be another 200 amp hour battery and add it to my 2 200 amp hour batteries and have 600 amp hours of house bank battery. Now my boat's only 35 feet long. I don't need that much house bank battery. It's just like, what if, right? What if I wanted to? But I think most likely these will end up staying as my home power outage backup batteries because, I'm also going to show you in the next one, if you put these in series, now it becomes a 24, well in essence 12.8 times 2, a 25.6 volt battery bank. And if I plug this into my solar generators, it will actually charge them at 200 watts, almost like plugging them into a wall outlet. So that's pretty cool. So I'll show you that in the next episode. Hopefully you're looking forward to that. And until next time, this is Craig signing off, wishing you safe cruising.